Today's topic: how much does retirement spending actually drop in retirement? Or does it? This is a very fun topic, probably one of the more popular topics out there in the personal finance world. This was also triggered from a prospective client where they kind of just asked that, right? What should we be aiming for? And even myself, in terms of a large audience looking at YouTube, there is kind of that high level overview that you have to provide, right? Until you can run full out long term cash flow projections, and even there, it was called a cloudy crystal ball at best. There are some rules that have been so cemented in our minds that we still use them today as really good baselines. So we're going to walk through what the old rule was compared to what we're actually seeing today. And while some of it holds up, a lot has also changed quite a bit. So we're going to walk through all of that coming up next. All right, let's get into it. So again, quickly, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Give us a thumbs up, spread the message out there, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell icon, get a notification every time we release a new video. If you're looking for an awesome financial advising team, yeah, that's us. We're growing. We're adding more advisors, which allows us more capacity to work with you. You can schedule a free icebreaker call right on our website. That's it. That's the pitch. Let's hit it. All right, so what's the old rule? Well, historically, it kind of reminds me of like the 4% rule. It's a good number to quote to a large audience, but at the end of the day, you want to kind of fine tune it, right? That's what financial planning is. So what's the old rule? Well, the old rule says this, that you should likely plan to live off of, to spend 70 to 80% of your working income. So let's just use easy math because I'm not great with math. I'm kidding, I'm decent at math. But let's just say you had 100,000, right? Well, now you're retired. You should be aiming for about 70 to 80,000. Again, take those numbers, build them based on your income. Why? Well, why is that lower? I actually wrote down some of the things that we see that are not as common in retirement. Let's start with the biggie, right? Well, you're not working anymore, so there's no more payroll taxes. In today's world, this might not be as powerful, but you're not commuting to work anymore. For some of you, that could be a large expense. What's your wardrobe, right? You going to the dry cleaner a lot, huh? Okay, you got little things like that. Many retirees, homes are paid off, although I'm going to give you a jaw dropper of a fact in a little bit, so stay tuned for that. Kids are often out of the house. Now, what we notice with clients, even when kids are out of the house, there's still expenses. And let's be honest, eventually, God willing, those kids are going to have their own kids. And if you want to see people spend a lot of money, let them have grandkids. That's where money is really spent. And then the other one put in there is clearly, again, not working anymore. So we don't see a lot of savings towards retirement plans. But again, I'm going to add some notes to that as we work our way down here. So over time, what did we see? Well, that 70 to 80% rule started to kind of get some traction because you had the Department of Labor quoting that number. You have numerous studies from Vanguards and Fidelities of the world, the juggernauts out there. So you really start to believe that that is the number. And, as we know, old habits die hard. And we'll even explain to new clients, like, yes, should it go down? Theoretically, it should. But does it? We don't see that as much. And I'll walk through in kind of our next one, how we describe it. But the idea is that once you stop working, a lot of those expenses are going to go down. The one thing they note in there too is housing, right? You're one of your largest one of your largest costs. For most of you, likely from your mortgage. Maybe you're still renting later. Those costs will change, right? If your mortgage is paid off, great. If you're renting, that's still a fixed cost. Ideally, that while you were renting, hopefully it was less expensive than the mortgage, right? And you were investing that, so you're still in a good spot. But regardless, we're not going to have a whole housing debate today. So what does it actually look like in the long run then? So, we call it the U. I found out in my research that they actually, I believe it's the Society of Actuaries. They call it the smile. I actually like the smile a lot better than a U. But what do we see on our side of it? Well, early on in retirement, now this is one that we've utilized before, but this is very common. We call it the go-go years, right? 65 to 74 are the highest go-go years. So what we see there is a lot more spending. Where's that spending? Usually in the form of travel, right? This is, hey, we just retired. We got all this money. Let's go. Health is good. Let's rock and roll, baby. So we'll see a lot of spending early on. And then we'll start to see this dip, right? And eventually it starts to go up again. Now, the bad news is the reason why it comes up on the other side is usually not ideal. Usually that's based on health, right? Health starts to go the other way on us. So then our healthcare costs start to go up. So we see this U formed. So while we do see spending eventually tick down over time, it's not this like, hey, I retire and then we start to go down, 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 down. It's usually actually going to be probably staying close to the same, if not a little bit higher, depending on what those trips are. I've seen some of these river cruises, right? Those things are expensive. So you'll see this eventually gradually slow down. And then they'll start to go back up. And then oddly enough, the age 65 to 74, remember, for most of us, RMDs 75 could be all the way up to age 73. There's also a point where Uncle Sam's going to force you to pull money out. So that's also why we'll start to kind of see the other side of that U. So whether it's your healthcare costs going up or it's just Uncle Sam forcing more money out, we're going to start to see that change in there. So, at a very high level, I still think for a broad audience, using that 70 to 80% number is a good number to work with. But unless you're building out, 30, 40-year cash flow projections, there's a lot more detail that needs to be included. Now, the one fact that I kind of noted there at the start was in the 1980s, this is why it's just different times. Even the 4% rule. The 4% rule, a lot of that testing was done when interest rates were at much different levels. They're much lower and they've been lower for a while now, right? In 1980s, 42% of retirees were completely debt-free. Do you know what that number is today? You don't. Okay. It's 22%. So only 22% of retirees are completely debt-free. And what's the main debt at this age? Well, it's your mortgage, right? And housing can be a very large expense, depending on where you live, the size of the house that you have. But this is a big shift in those numbers, right? So before, in a room of 10, right, 4 of them, now 2 of them. That's a big shift. And we see that even with high income physicians that we work with, there are a few that probably pretty close to that number actually that still have mortgages. Now they're not like setting up brand new 30-year mortgages, but that is a big cost that's still in there. So that is one that we have seen quite a bit now that has definitely changed since, I keep calling it the old rule, but the original rule of that 70-80. More individuals have debt longer. What else are we seeing? Well, taxes don't disappear. So taxes you would label are still historically low, but they don't disappear. You're still going to have taxes come into play. Depending on how your portfolios were built, depending on how you saved. Taxes are a huge part of this. We're going to have more videos this month. It's really a lot of our October videos are going to be a little bit heavier on the retiree community than our usual like accumulator year, where a lot of our videos are physicians, things of that nature. I think it just comes with our clients too. Our clients continue to get a little bit more later in the career path, larger net worth, so these topics continue to come up more and more and more. But taxes are not going away. And this also comes back to how you were saving, right? For a lot of you that are probably finding this video now where retirement is close by, Roths weren't that cool back then. Roths are a lot cooler today. But RMDs can be a major tax hit. This is why we always say Roth conversions are probably one of the most valuable tax tools out there. But if you saved everything pre-tax, those RMDs can be a pain. Now, if you were, very adamant on non-qualified and you're doing everything into your brokerage account, your joint brokerage account, there we're only working around capital gains. But the key here is taxes are not going anywhere. And they're still going to be a part of your life. And you need to be prepared for that. And you need to work with a very good accountant, ideally a very good financial planner, to work around those. And then you get into the tax planning, right? If you take out too much from a portfolio, then we get into IRMA issues, and all of a sudden you're paying surcharges on Medicare. Could you get pushed into a higher tax bracket? Could you get pushed into higher capital gains brackets? Taxes are a big part of this. Not to say that they weren't back then, but we now have a retirement society that pensions are almost becoming like a dinosaur. Social Security, yep, still there, but we always get a scary headline every other day. Again, for our younger clients, we don't even plug in Social Security. We pretty much say, hey, if it's there, great, it's bonus. But this means you're more reliant on your investments. If you're more reliant on your investments, how you withdraw those funds is even more important. This is why I always will joke, In the accumulator years, it's just save, 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 save. Clearly, you want to do it the right way, but you're just saving. Decumulation planning adds a big layer to it. Decumulation planning has a big part to do with this taxes. We still see continued savings. Clients are now gifting, right? Whether they're using a donor advised fund, whether they're using QCDs, maybe they're just gifting outright to their charities. They're doing gifting to their kids. They might want to start working on legacy planning. If they have federal state tax problems, good for you, good problem to have. But now we're working and moving things around to different trusts and things of that nature. But there is a habit to continue to save. I'll tell you another big area we see here is even when those RMDs occur, not uncommon for clients to take some of them. Maybe they send some as a QCD, but they end up putting more back into the markets because they had a pretty good retirement. They had a good system going. And then all of a sudden, Uncle Sam says, you got to take out this extra money. And that throws them off a bit. Housing and healthcare, as I just noted, 44% used to be completely debt-free. Now that's cut in half to 22%. Housing is still in their financial plan, in their budget. Healthcare, it's not getting any cheaper. It keeps going up. Even when we get into, especially the gap years, if you retire before Medicare, before 65, that is a big part that you need to plan for. Even after that, what type of supplement plans are you adding? How much are you actually utilizing those, right? How much needs do you actually have? So the real world today, I think, is a lot more complicated than that 70 to 80% rule. I still believe that number holds up pretty well, at least at a high level. Clearly, I'm hoping most of you are at least working with a financial planner in some capacity, even if that's a one-time plan, whether that's hourly plan. It doesn't have to be a lifetime commitment, but getting a detailed analysis can go a good way. And again, I think any good financial advisor will tell you it's a cloudy crystal ball. We can look at healthcare today and be very, very content with that number because we see it, right? We know what you're paying. But 10, 20, 15 years from now, we don't know. We didn't plug into long-term care, anything of that nature. So the main takeaways are that, the rule still holds up pretty well, just making sure I'm not missing any of the other notes I actually typed out. Again, we see that uptick early on. We kind of see this taper over time. Variations will be really based on health, travel, and overall wealth. But the number still holds up pretty well. But you do need to keep account that is a different world today. From the 1980s, to 2025 now when we're recording this video, things have changed. So how much does spending in retirement actually drop? I think it's less than you would actually imagine. And I think that's also just based on how we live, right? You were already used to spending that. And as I always say, once the mortgage payment is gone, you're probably going to fill in that bucket pretty quickly. Whether that's with extra travel, whether that's spoiling the grandkids, spoiling the kids. Humans are very systems based. So that's why we don't see it drop as much as you would think. Now, again, that will change person by person. As you're watching this, some of you are saying, no, it's going to change a lot. Others are like, I'm probably going to spend even more. So just keep that in mind. I still, again, going back to that 70-80 rule, I think it's fair. Very, very well quoted number. Again, the big players out there, Vanguards, Fidelities, Department of Labor has even noted that number. But fun topic, not a perfect answer. I know that there's a little bit of kind of moving around here, but this is real life examples from our side of it on what we see with our clients. And clearly, you can search that topic, 70 to 80% rule, and you're going to find all sorts of stuff, just like you can if you do the 4% withdrawal rule. So fun topic. I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed preparing for this one. Just to see some of that data in there, right? Some of the actual facts that we're seeing is pretty wild. So let me know what questions you have, if you liked it, if you loved it, if you challenge the 70-80 rule, if you're going to spend more than that, drop in the comments below. If you'd like to see us build on this topic, or if you have topics similar to this, or any topic for that matter, drop those in the show notes below. Again, I always appreciate you jumping on here for the last right around 15 minutes or so. Again, right around our normal time, back to normal. Questions, comments, concerns, drop those below. Again, thanks for hanging out with me.